Paul is a 19-year-old digital student coming to London. Paul goes around London and sees a namesake St. Paul Cathedral. Simple Google search reveals that it's a Baroque-style Anglican church cathedral serving religious and monarchical purposes. As it's not the area of Paul's interests, he quickly disregards it. But should he? Given St. Paul's Cathedral's survival-driven boundaries, ages, and decades, student Paul could have revealed some answers if he had managed to look at St. Paul's Cathedral's role, function, and look through time. If he jumped to Norman period, Paul would learn about the beginnings. He had to travel back to early 1000s. The Normans founded Old St. Paul's after a 10,087 fire and set it up in so-called Norman style. The cathedral had a protection wall as one of the most defining characteristics of Romanesque or Norman style. The establishment has granted the cathedral a massive quality with thick walls, with a central city location for further protection. Paul attributes the cathedral decorative arcading round arcs, sturdy pillars, and large towers to Romanesque style. Then was the first fire that destroyed minor decorations in Celtic churches, and the cathedral jumped right to its Gothic style. In the 12th century, London had a medieval city plan with most buildings made of wood, with an overcrowded warren of narrow, winding cobbled alleys. The new Gothic-style cathedral aimed to become the greatest, with the largest and the most expensive spire. Monarchs and other notables were often attended the cathedral. Even the court occasionally had session there. Based on central Romanesque location with massive and protective walls, its Gothic addition was aimed to enlighten the feeling of awe and fear. The entrance was very restrictive, with only uses for the royal family and religious figures. It was the Gothic period, and after that followed a Reformation. The early 16th century Reformation shook those beliefs. The authority of Catholic bishops was questioned. The destruction of icons, open accessibility for peasants, denial of structure and religious authority brought more simplicity to the style. Icons and vast decorations were removed. The building became not just a spiral but an educational institution with after-school lessons and open accessibility events that still operate daily. However, one drastic event shook the whole image of cathedral. It was the Great Fire of 1666. After the Great Fire, the first architect was appointed to reconstruction. It was not a group anymore. It was an individual architect named Christopher Wren. Christopher Wren aimed to reconstruct old Romanesque Gothic approaches, but also added his style. He prioritized functionality over grotesque Gothic and Baroque churches, and brought a lot of French and Italian Renaissance ideas. Wren proposed to restore the body of the Gothic building but replace the existing tower with a dome. As a result, St. Paul's Cathedral was completely renovated. During the Renaissance and Enlightenment, the ideas of architecture as a product of individual artistic style, personality, and ambitions influenced the collection of biography of Christopher Wren. It also encouraged the monarchy to make Wren design the cathedral and the entire area of the city of London. Even now, the structure of the financial district within the area heavily relies on Wren's structure of streets, grounded on massive Romanesque structures and individual Gothic figures. St. Paul started to show distinct features of Anglicanism at all, and started involving a lot of other individual characteristics such as long gallery walks and altar with pulpits. Further changes were imposed because of constant World War II bombing distractions. Besides religious motifs, a plaque on the floor dedicated to the men and women of the St. Paul's Watch, the volunteer charged with putting out fires caused by bombing raids. It was also a central protest during the anti-capitalist Occupy Wall Street movement and even the target of the 2019 planned terrorist attack. If Paul comes back through the history and looks at modern St. Paul's today, he would be still impressed by Romanesque's massiveness and structure, and immediately associate the Gothic building with monarchical and religious power. However, there would be no Gothic fear. The cathedral is located in the city of London. Now St. Paul's Dome is the first thing city visitors encounter while exploring the River Thames. Seeing the cathedral in the central financial district inside the commercial hub of the Royal Exchange shook the sacred and exclusive portrayal of the cathedral. Learning laws further reinforced that by placing building height restrictions and saving visibility of the cathedral. Walking from the south, student Paul would have come from the Millennium Bridge, seeing St. Paul just in an old town background, focusing on changing lights, distorted shapes, and modern materials of Millennium Bridge. By his rail, Paul would have encountered St. Paul's Primary School, fully integrated with the cathedral. The school is one of the continuous St. Paul's educational department institutions. If Paul come from the west, he would have encountered a direct religious and monarchical throwback from Victorian and Anglican periods, with the Queen's statue making him explore classical art. The northern approach would move him back to Renaissance, walking along the classical garden, and the eastern look would have almost granted him a new industrialized look. Paul would have understood that St. Paul's is a complex building that cannot be put into the box and proclaimed by one individual, one century, one period, one style, or other restrictions. Impossible to define if Romanesque mass, Gothic delicacy, Reformational accessibility, Renaissance individual style, historical fires, revolutions, or monarchical tensions made St. Paul's what it is today. And shall we? St. Paul is a gracious building with centuries of history, has changed in the past, it's changing right now, and it will sure undergo the changes of future.